Right now, you are warm. You probably don't even notice it, but you are. Somewhere on a wall in your home, there's a small dial, and the moment the air dips below a certain point, a machine switches on and solves the problem before your body even has a chance to complain. You move from a heated house, into a heated car, into a heated building. And the coldest moment of your entire day is likely the few seconds it takes to cross between them. Winter for you is a minor hassle. It's scraping frost off a windshield. It's grabbing a thicker coat. It's grumbling that the sun goes down too soon. But for nearly all of human history, winter wasn't a hassle at all. Winter was the season built to end you, and it never attacked from just one angle. It came at you from four directions at once. The cold could finish you off, the hunger could finish you off, the animals could finish you off, and the long, black, endless nights could wear you down before any of the others got their chance. So here's the real question. For hundreds of thousands of years, with no furnace, no grocery store, no walls that actually kept the wind out, how did people make it through winter at all? Because they did. Your ancestors marched straight into some of the harshest environments on the planet and came out on the other side. And the method they used to pull that off is one of the most remarkable feats our species has ever managed. Start with the obvious enemy, the cold itself. Here's a fact that surprises most people. The human body is a tropical machine. We evolved in the warm stretches of Africa, and left alone, an unprotected human loses body heat quickly in freezing conditions. Hypothermia can set in within hours. Your fingers seize up. Your thoughts slow to a crawl. And once your internal temperature drops past a certain point, everything just shuts down. No claws, no thick coat of fur, no built-in insulation to speak of. By any reasonable measure, we're among the worst designed large animals on Earth for enduring a brutal winter. And yet, humans didn't merely survive the cold. They marched directly into it. They pushed north into Ice Age Europe, into Siberia, into regions where winter temperatures fell far below what a bare human body can tolerate. So, how did they manage it? The first answer is fire. And we'll circle back to what fire meant for those long, dark nights shortly. But fire has a flaw. It only heats the side of you facing it. It doesn't travel along with you the instant you step away from the flames to hunt or gather more wood. The cold rushes straight back in. Fire by itself was never going to cut it. What ancient people needed was a way to keep warmth wrapped around their own bodies everywhere they went. Which brings us to what might be the single most critical piece of winter technology humans ever came up with. Clothing, but not the version you're likely picturing. For a long stretch, the assumption was straightforward. It's cold, so you drape an animal skin over your shoulders and call it done. And for a while, that's precisely what people did. But a hide slung over your back leaves openings everywhere. Wind slips in at the sides. Your arms hang exposed. It shifts and falls off the moment you move. A draped pelt beats nothing at all. But in a genuine winter, beating nothing still gets you killed. The real leap forward was learning to cut hides into sections and stitch them back together into shapes built to match the human body. Fitted sleeves, closed seams, a garment that sealed a pocket of warm air right against your skin and held it there no matter how much you moved. That's the gap between a blanket and a coat. But here's the catch. To pull this off, you need a needle. Not any old needle, one with an eye, a tiny opening for thread. This is a genuinely tricky object to produce. You take a splinter of bone, grind it down to a fine point, then bore a hole through it small enough to be delicate but sturdy enough not to shatter. Researchers have uncovered bone needles like this, dating back more than 40,000 years, with some finds pushing even further back. These aren't crude accidents, they're precise intentional tools, and whoever crafted them knew exactly what job they were built for. The thread itself also came from the animal. Sinew, the tough connective fiber linking muscle to bone, could be pulled free, dried out, and used to bind hides into something that would hold. Layer a garment like that with fur facing inward against the body, and suddenly a human being could stand in air cold enough to kill and remain alive inside a private bubble of warmth. Sewn clothing wasn't a luxury. It was the technology that let our species step outside the warm continent it evolved in and colonize the coldest corners of the planet. Take away the needle and the thread, and there's no human population surviving an ice age Siberian winter. So now you're warm enough. You can move, work, hunt, but the light is fading. The temperature is still falling. And a second problem shows up that no coat can fix. You need somewhere to make it through the night. The obvious answer is a cave. And caves genuinely mattered. A deep cave holds a steady temperature, breaks the wind, and keeps snow off your head. But here's what nobody mentions about caves. They're scarce. A good, dry, defensible cave in a sensible location was rare, and if you managed to find one, chances are somebody else wanted it too. You couldn't count on finding a cave. Most of the time, if you needed a place to ride out winter, you had to construct it yourself. And this is where things get extraordinary. At a site called Mizhyrich in modern-day Ukraine, archaeologists uncovered the remains of dwellings built roughly 15,000 years ago. But the surrounding landscape had almost no timber and almost no stone, so the people there built homes from the one raw material available in massive supply: the bones of mammoths. They stacked and interlocked the remains of dozens of mammoths into round, dome-shaped structures, hundreds of bones in a single dwelling, jawbones layered like shingles, enormous tusks arched over the entryways. These weren't hasty disposable shelters. They were serious engineered constructions meant to hold firm through a merciless winter, and they demanded genuine planning and real effort to assemble. Inside a structure like that, every effort went toward trapping the warmth. Floors got lined. At a site in South Africa, researchers found evidence of bedding built from layered grasses and leaves, arranged with care, dating back a staggering 77,000 years. People were making their shelters comfortable long before our species had even left the African continent. The effort didn't stop at the floor. Think about that mammoth bone hut for a second. Bone doesn't fit together seamlessly. There are gaps everywhere, and every gap is an open door for the wind. So people sealed them, layer after layer. They stretched animal hides across the interior walls and pinned them over openings. They cut blocks of turf and stacked them against the outer walls. And some groups even packed snow up against their shelters, since a thick layer of snow is actually an excellent insulator. It traps pockets of air, and trapped air holds heat. Bit by bit, the wind ran out of places to sneak through. A shelter stopped being just walls. It became a whole system, and it kept people alive on nights that should have finished them off. But a well-sealed shelter creates a fresh problem, and it's a serious one. Keeping a fire burning through a long winter takes fuel, a huge amount of it. And gathering fuel means someone has to keep stepping back out into the cold, again and again, all season long. You're bound to that shelter. You can't simply wander off, which means the food you require has to either be close by or already stored away. So ancient people became masters of food storage, and they developed a handful of brilliant methods. The first was drying. Slice meat thin and let it dry, whether in sunlight or over the low smoke of a fire, and you pull the moisture out of it. Without moisture, it can't rot. Dried meat could keep for months, and the smoke added a second layer of preservation on top of the drying itself. A rack of drying meat in autumn was, in every practical sense, a group's insurance policy against starving by late winter. The second method was turning the cold itself into a tool. Frozen ground works as a natural freezer. Dig a pit down into the permafrost, pack it with meat from a good kill, and the cold would keep it edible for a remarkably long time. Winter, the very thing trying to starve them, became the thing preserving the food that kept them alive. But the single most valuable food in winter wasn't meat exactly. It was fat. When your body is burning huge amounts of energy just to stay warm, lean meat alone isn't enough. Fat is the densest energy source available, and deep in winter, it was worth more than almost anything else. Ancient people rendered animal fat down into a stable, storable substance, an energy-dense fuel for the human body. They combined dried meat with fat into a dense, long-lasting ration that packed enormous calories into a small, portable form. In a season where every calorie counted, fat was the difference between a group that reached spring and one that didn't. So now you're warm, you're sheltered, and you've stockpiled enough to eat. You've beaten 3 of winter's 4 death sentences, but there's a fourth, and it's the one people almost never consider because it doesn't attack the body, it attacks the mind: the darkness. In winter, especially the further north you travel, the days shrink and the nights stretch out brutally long. You might get only a handful of usable daylight hours, followed by 15 or 16 hours of cold darkness with nothing to do. And you can't travel far. You can't hunt effectively in the dark. You're confined to a small space with the same handful of people for an extended stretch, night after night after night. And that kind of enclosure, that constant waiting, can wear a person down in a way that cold and hunger never managed to. But here's what ancient people did with those long, dark hours. They didn't just tolerate them, they filled them completely. This was the time for every task that didn't require daylight or fair weather. Sitting near the fire, repairing tools, shaping fresh spear points, mending clothing for the rest of the season, twisting plant fiber into cord, carving. The long night wasn't wasted time. It was workshop time. The hours when a group readied everything it would need the instant the weather broke. And it was more than labor. Around that winter fire in the dark is where people talked, where the elders passed everything they knew down to the young, where stories got retold, the same tales again and again, carrying a group's memory and knowledge across generations. A huge share of what we now call human culture, the myths, the songs, the shared knowledge, was forged in exactly these conditions. In 2014, researcher Polly Wiesner published a study examining conversations among the Jew/Huansi in the Kalahari, finding that after dark, talk shifted overwhelmingly away from practical matters and towards stories, song, and ritual. Firelight itself seemed to change what people were willing to share. People pressed together against the darkness, keeping each other warm, keeping each other sane, keeping each other human, until the light returned. Winter didn't just test the body. In a strange way, it built the mind. And when you pull back and look at the whole picture, something striking comes into focus. Winter didn't just get survived. Winter shaped us. Consider it. The pressure of the cold is what pushed people to invent fitted, sewn clothing. The scarcity of caves is what pushed them to invent real architecture. The seasonal gap in food is what pushed them to invent storage and preservation. And the long, dark nights account for a massive share of where culture itself was formed. Nearly every technology that let our species spread into every climate on the planet was forged in the struggle to survive the cold. The harshest season on Earth didn't just fail to wipe us out. It made us far more capable than we had any right to be. So here's the complete picture. Winter came at your ancestors with 4 weapons. The cold, and they answered it with fire and with fitted, sewn clothing. The night, and they answered it by constructing shelters out of whatever the land offered, even the bones of mammoths. The hunger, and they answered it by drying, freezing, and rendering food into stores that could carry a group for months. And the darkness, and they answered it by turning the longest, coldest nights into the workshop and the classroom where human culture itself was born. Every single winter was a test that a great many people failed. Survival was never guaranteed. It was earned each and every year through preparation, skill, and sheer stubbornness. And now look at you. You turn a dial and the room warms up. You open a door and there's food grown on the other side of the planet in the dead of December. You complain the sun sets too early. From inside a house your ancestors couldn't have dreamed of. Having never once in your life felt the specific dread of watching the first snowfall and wondering whether you'd stored enough to see spring. You don't survive winter anymore. You barely register it. And that's not because winter got any gentler. It's because 100,000 years of human beings freezing and starving and huddling together in the dark slowly figured out how to beat it, one invention at a time.